Good evening, everybody. Welcome to my next, or my second talk in English. I'm moving into a slightly more unfamiliar territory for me. As you know, I'm an astronomer, so I'm well comfortable in math and physics. Biology and chemistry, not so much. So tonight's about biology and chemistry. So, but I'm just going to stay on the safe side. I asked people last time to mention subjects that they were interested in, like today. If you have interesting subjects, drop them there and I will scan them. Some of you, or some of the other people, have mentioned well, all kinds of extreme life and stuff like that. And basically, I'm interested in that too. And the last couple of years, astronomers and scientists in general have been starting to think about life in the universe outside of Earth, and not in a ridiculous way, but in a proper scientific way. And that's basically the approach that I want to do tonight. So we're going to start at all kinds of made-up stuff, and then focus on real stuff, real life that we have on Earth, and then see basically how life on Earth deals with things, and perhaps we can draw up a hypothesis. So we're going to talk about alien life, but basically by looking at Earth's organisms, because still the Earth is the only place that we know that has life so far. But perhaps aliens look like this. They might, I don't know. Or even better, some of you might recognize these creatures, not from a science fiction show or whatever, but these are actual organisms that exist on Earth. But I love this guy. We'll see him later. But this one is very special. It's called a sea butterfly. It's not a butterfly, of course. It's a snail, slug, snail, without that. So it's a sea snail, and of course the colors and all these dots around it looks like stars, like some big creature in space. So it's a very, very nice photo, but it's actually a creature that exists. But it looks pretty alien to me with the lighting brain. I don't know if it's a brain, but it could be a brain and everything. So it looks science fiction-like. And I'm going to talk about science fiction and stuff like that too, a bit, because I'm a big fan of that. But these are actual science photos, okay? And the colors here are made up in this one. And well, these scales, basically, the colors are not that really that strong, but they are realistic colors. So I'm going to talk about him later. So first off, we have to talk a bit about terminology. So in Dutch, we don't really have the word alien, and the word alien in the English language doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial life, like we understand that. It basically means other, and it's from the Latin. It means other, so other life than on Earth. So that's just the word alien. If it's not your own language, then it might be a bit strange word, but that's what it means. So other life, and we're going to look at the Earth, and basically the Earth is one example. Now, doing scientific research with one example is pretty bad. Basically, you need at least 3 to see patterns, and preferably more. But NS1, as they call it, you can call it case study. So there's an official name for that. So if you only have one example, you can study that. Don't call it a proper research, but call it a case study. And they do this in medicine, and basically you can draw some proper conclusions from just a case study, but mention it. So far we only know about life on Earth, and we think, hi, join us, sure. More people come? Oh, wow, okay, sure. Go sit. So we think that all life on Earth has descended from one ancestor called Luca. As you can see, last universal common ancestor. It's been a while, more than 3.5 billion years ago. And this is hypothetical, of course. We haven't been there, we haven't seen it. There's no fossil from that one single cell organism, but it's an assumption that makes sense in a scientific way. So what we can do is basically we can make a hypothesis of what could alien life look like, or what should it do or function basically. And well, if you're going to make a scientific, or if you're going to start a scientific research project or something, you have to think about your hypothesis, and before that, you have to do some preliminary research. So literary, you're going to take the literature and look up what has been done before. And this is basically what I'm going to show you tonight. It's not very high standing or whatever, it's also entertaining, I hope. So we can do a preliminary investigation, and that basically means that we're going to start with a fiction as old fiction, so mythology and folklore and stuff like that. And people made up other kinds of life that they didn't see around, and sometimes they got confused. They saw people on horses and they thought it was one creature, and that's a centaur creature, of course. And they made up these creatures, as you can see. There's the centaur, so half man, half horse, or half man, half ox, whatever. So the minotaur. So they made up all kinds of creatures, and then they sort of mixed them together. So a lion and a man, and this one is nice. It's the Scylla. It's half, well, one half man, and then 3 dog heads and 1 fish tail. You can't make this up. I mean, they must have been on drugs. I don't know. But it's funny. But this is biologically nonsense. This would never evolve like this. But it makes for nice stories and stuff like that. And of course, this is completely ridiculous. So this is really cut and paste animals, right? I mean, this creature, the harpy, even has a face. Probably a face that the guy who drew this from someone in the neighborhood or something. I don't know. But this is completely silly, right? This is just sticking parts together. But it looks nice. It makes for nice stories. But more recently, say roughly the last 2 centuries, there has been fictional literature, of course. Some of the older ones are Jules Verne. He wrote the first science fiction. And of course there was the story of Frankenstein, the story of Dracula. They were all made up. So more recently we have fantasy and science fiction. And well, you know some of these perhaps. That's an original drawing of Smaug from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, of course. And this is the Balrog from one of those movies. And we have all kinds of creatures made up, but in the more recent science fiction of the, well, let's see, well, my life, so not very recent for you, but they made up these creatures. So this one is from basically an invader from Mars. And when that story was first told, it was a radio drama, so it was talked about on radio. People were genuinely scared because they thought there was an invasion, actual invasion from Mars. This was almost 100 years ago, and they didn't really know that there was no life on Mars, as far as we know. But so they were actually scared there was an invasion going on. I mean, this was around the 2 world wars, so it's not that strange, but they were genuinely scared, and this is just an image of what it could look like. It's very technological. More recent, in the 70s and 80s, they made up these creatures from the Alien and Predator movies, if you know them. And they are more biologically based on stuff that actually exists. And we're going to see them also. But of course, they're in science fiction. If we're going to look at alien life forms, then science fiction might be an idea of how that looks like. Well, one of the big franchises now is, of course, Dune. Perhaps you're also waiting for the second movie in April. And this has sandworms in it. And well, this is gigantic, really. Actual worms exist, of course, and if you zoom in, they might be very frightening. But this story was written by a guy who had a proper scientific education. He was an ecologist, and he was researching the dunes in California and thinking about how you could change a desert-like landscape into a more green landscape. And that is also in this huge Dune story. He wrote 6 books, and now all kinds of movies are made after that. But the sandworms are very central in that story. So if you're interested in a sort of ecologically sound science fiction, the whole Dune book series is very interesting. And I'm also a big fan of Star Wars. So, and the Star Wars, I mean, these are old Star Wars creatures. The Disney Star Wars looks nice. I don't like the stories as much, but okay, I'm old, whatever. But all this stuff is from the old Star Wars movie, and they had all kinds of different creatures. And what I like about it is that these creatures are not just guys in suits, right? You had a lot of guys in rubber suits in the old science fiction. Basically, this even in Jabba, I think there's 4 guys doing all the parts in that suit, and I don't know. This is maybe probably a stick figure or something. I don't know how they did this, but whatever. And this is probably an elephant, but then dressed with all kinds of stuff. But they sort of try to make creatures that could be true, and it looks great. I love this stuff. I mean, even this is terrifying basically, but it looks great. And also their sounds were very strange and everything. So that's really one of the things that I like about Star Wars. It's a space fantasy basically. There's not much science in there, but it's a nice fantasy story in space with spaceships and stuff like it. I'm basically sold then already. So this is all fiction. It's nice, but there's not real proper science behind this. But it looks great.